Welcome to the Greensky Social Work Podcast. My name is Greensky, and I'm a clinical social worker in private practice and a social work college professor. This is part 4 of a 10-part series on the very serious topic of suicide for anyone interested in learning more about suicide. The topic for part 4 is older adults and suicide. Now, older adults have a very elevated risk of suicide, and we really do need to assess older adults in all different settings. So nursing homes will assess for older adults. Any sort of senior services that are offered always assess for suicides. Even physicians are beginning to be trained in assessing for suicide, particularly with older adults. And it really calls to question, do older adults in particular have a right to take their own life? You know, we are living much longer, and we're living much longer, but in very debilitating conditions. So, you know, you have a lot of older adults may have a terminal illness. They may be dealing with chronic pain. And so what we're having is that people's lives are being extended, but the quality of their life is really not increasing. So we are living much longer with debilitating conditions. And so it becomes sort of an ethical decision. And with older adults, some states like Oregon, for instance, said, okay, you can assist suicide. So there's some laws that are coming out, particularly in hospice settings, where they're like, you know what, if you have someone and you know that they're never ever going to get better and they're in this chronic pain, perhaps we can have physician-assisted suicide. This is a very, ethical and philosophical debate that people consider very seriously. And but for social workers and mandated reporters, if we feel like you are at risk, there are things that you have to do to treat that risk. So in dealing with older adults, a lot of times what a social worker might do, for instance, is make an assessment. Ask them questions about their friends. Do they have friends? How mobile are they? Are they still able to do daily living skills? Are they still able to wash themselves? Can they go to the bathroom on their own? How mobile are they? Are they someone who does yoga 4 or 5 times a week? Or are they someone who just sits around and are sedentary? You also need to look at work, because sometimes older adults can become very lonely. Like suppose they retire from employment, and maybe sometimes, a lot of times older adults will retire from employment and it'll be a very good thing, or it could be a thing where they're just kind of forced out of the job. And so this can become very depressing. Asking them about if they're married or if they have pets in the home, and, just their general health and mental health are all of the things that you need to assess to determine if they've lost things, so maybe older adults did have a good network of friends, but a lot of them have died. Maybe there's an onset of dementia or neurocognitive disorders. Maybe there's some financial issues going on. Maybe their role in the family has changed dramatically and they don't feel as important. So, what we do is we assess for isolation. We ask questions about loneliness and risk factors. The number one risk factor of suicide for older adults is the recent death of a spouse or someone close. And so, we need to consider that. And oftentimes, sometimes you have an undiagnosed or untreated depression with older adults that can also lead to suicide. We do know that physicians really do need to be trained in this area. 20% of older adults who committed suicide did so within 1 day of committing suicide. 41% saw a doctor within 1 week of their death by suicide. 75% of older adults saw a doctor within 1 month of their suicide by death. So, we really need to assess how isolated people are and how isolated people may feel during this time. So if you have an older adult in your life or someone who is up there in age, we now understand that they often are more isolated. It's important to check in with them and talk to them and make them feel important, because we know the risk factors. Particularly loneliness is the number one. Perceived health problems, physical issues with pain and chronic illness, and recent death of a spouse or someone close. Also major role changes, for example, in retirement and being able to adjust to how things are. And, in United States culture, older adults are kind of left aside, and westernized societies, don't see older adults in a very positive way like some other cultures do. And so we do need to consider that. So my name is Greensky. Thank you very much for listening to the Greensky Social Work Podcast.